Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast. Today's entrepreneurs are mental athletes that have to know about the mind and how to keep it fit. Our goal is to increase our resilience against stress and anxiety, optimize our productivity, motivation, and optimism by learning about the human mind through psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior. I'm your host Ozan. I'm a founder who has experienced the challenges of launching and growing a business and a keen student of human behavior over the last 15 years. I'll share with you what I know and learn. Hundreds of impactful, behavior-changing ideas are waiting to be discovered by us. Let's begin now. Hello and welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast for entrepreneurs. My name is Ozan and I'm your host for this show. So the question today is it really okay to fail? And when is it not okay to fail? I think this is a particularly interesting question because in the world of startups and entrepreneurship in general, there are a lot of unknowns, huge uncertainty. It's essentially a new terrain that's being discovered in a collaborative spirit by all the people who are in this journey. So that's why the failure is a natural part of it. We try, we learn, we sometimes fail, sometimes become hugely successful, and we think that is very, very natural. But the complications start to arise when we actually realize entrepreneurs do not live in isolation, and not everyone is an entrepreneur. So if you are one, there is no further explanation needed, really, because it's quite natural that there is a risk of failure. But there are investors, some of which, to be fair, have been entrepreneurs in their past, which makes sense, and they're the best kind of investors, but not all of them are. And you are in contact with people that you work with, your colleagues, other businesses. If you are selling to B2C, then you have your consumers. If you are selling B2B, then you have these organizations you're partnering with. You go to events and talk to people. You have consultants. So it's a huge ecosystem of people that you have around you. And your conversations with these people are actually really important in terms of seeing yourself under a different light. It helps you position yourself in a way. And believe it or not, we are all vulnerable to what others think of us to a certain extent. Nobody is 100% immune to this, although we have different degrees of vulnerability. So the question is, why is it indeed okay to fail? What is the narrative you tell to yourself to be okay with failure? This is a question that I've asked myself. And the first time I asked this question, it was at the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And contrary to some of the folk tales out there, I did not start off by selling lemonade at the age of 14. I really do not come from a family background of people who were in commerce or entrepreneurship. My father was a teacher. So what I understand the best is education, and that's the sort of environment that I grew up in. And one of my goals was to be in an academic environment and actually contribute to science and so on. But I realized that actually today, in this day and age, especially in 2020, being an entrepreneur is like having a super secret weapon that just empowers you to unmeasurable extent. And so I think that's really valuable. If you know how to set up a successful business, if you know how to create the right systems and structures, delegate, optimize, systemize to keep having an income, and on the other hand, if you really can understand consumer demand and the dynamics of how to build and grow a business, then that's actually kind of like a superpower, because it means you can support yourself, your lifestyle, your family, your children, and everybody who loves you and who you live with, also other people that you don't know, and support the communities you're in without having to work in employment and without having to be under the domain of another business or be directly affected by other people's decisions who might be your boss. So because of that, I think it's a superpower. I think it's and I think it's a superpower because of a very specific reason as well. In life, like it goes back to a personal value I have. I think we live on a spectrum of freedom and responsibility. So these two dimensions, I think, are hugely valuable in understanding where we are in life. We seek freedom endlessly. We want that. We call it that. But at the other end, there is also a responsibility aspect of it. If we have 100% freedom but zero responsibility, not just to our families and our communities, but also to the environment, to the world, and to the bigger society we are in contact with, if we see zero responsibility, then that makes us villains. I don't know a better word for it. So we need to have a sense of responsibility, and this is one of the reasons why many of the millennial generations, which I'm a part of, and then the Z generation and the ones that come after that, have been criticized that they seek freedom but they don't seek enough responsibility. So I think that's an important point. When you become an entrepreneur, when you have that mindset, it empowers you in both of those areas at once. It gives you freedom to design your life, to have variability and flexibility in how you earn a living. On the other hand, it gives you the powers to actually take responsibility and create change through the business you have and through the money that you earn in the way that you want, as opposed to having to make a living and working in a marketing agency or an ad agency, and you're a very creative person and everything is going well. Next day, BP walks in as a client or a company that you know who's not really responsible in their ways, and for example goes to great extents with palm oil, plastic, pollution, etc. They come in and they want to be your client, and you cannot say no. It's quite difficult to do that because you're not running the business, you're not the owner of the business. So as an entrepreneur, you have that freedom of pointing the direction of the impact you have. So that feeds into responsibility and the freedom. So that was the first time I thought of the idea of, okay, this is really good, it's really worth it, but what if I fail? And immediately the analogy I had was understanding how humans learn, how children learn, even how kittens learn, right? So if you look at kittens and toddlers, what they do is they constantly try. And the key thing is, what makes them incredible learning machines is they're not afraid to fail, to the detriment of themselves. That's why they're not adults. A toddler will try things like touching a hot stove, trying to go down stairs, etc. That is potentially harmful to them. But because they have the freedom to try anything and everything without the fear of failure and without the fear of mistake, they are actually very quick learners. Now, as an adult, we have, of course, different conclusions about life. We understand things better, and we know that there are consequences to some of the actions and potentially detrimental ones. So we are quite more constrained in how we approach things. We are afraid of failure. And I think that's healthy. I would argue that it's healthy and it's normal to be afraid of failure to a certain extent. But I think the key difference, and I think this is how I pulled myself out of that dilemma, is thinking about failure in two different contexts. The first one is a corporate context, a large organization, 3,000 to 5,000 people, and you have a certain duty, versus failing in a game. Like imagine you're playing Mario or something like that, or Assassin's Creed, or one of my favorite games all time, Witcher. So imagine you're playing the game and you're not afraid to fail, right? And the fact that you're not afraid to fail means you can learn at a much more quicker pace. In the corporate context, however, even the fact that, and this is something I've observed time and time again, even the fact that you use these words, fail, mistake, so even these words by themselves creep people out. They don't want to be associated with these words. So John and fail, Samantha and mistake. So people even do not want to associate themselves with those words, right? And that creates a problem. If you're coming from that kind of a background, which I did back in the time, because I worked 6 years in large corporations, it was very, very difficult to convince myself to give myself the freedom to use these words liberally. And once you do that, I think that's the biggest first step that you can take to be more okay to fail, and to really be able to distinguish when is it okay to fail and when is it not. Be really free to use this word. Be liberal in terms of, this is a mistake I have done. This is where I failed. I'm proud of my failures and accomplishments as well. And I think there's a distinction between the types of mistakes and the types of failings. And I think the best example that actually underlines and clarifies the two types of different mistakes. One type of mistake you should try to avoid, and one type of mistake you should give yourself the freedom to make. So how do we differentiate those two groups? And I'm not usually the first person in the room to quote Jeff Bezos or the likes, but I think his particular example in this one really stuck with me and is a good one. He talks about two kinds of mistake in which your company, like Amazon in that case, is opening to a new market it has not been in, and is rolling out the sale of a new product, trying out a new service. Remember their what was the phone called, Fire, or the tablet, I don't remember, but they attempted to at the phone as well. So this is the type of mistake which is okay to make, because it's a new area, it's a new domain, lots of uncertainties, lots of lack of clarity in a lot of areas. So going out there and actually experimenting and trying is good. So that kind of mistake is the okay type of mistake. Now the second type of mistake, which is less okay to make, is, and in his example, they have a very clear and very comprehensive blueprint of how to build an Amazon warehouse. Let's say they have built 5,000 of those in the past, and you are the person responsible with building the 5,001st warehouse. So you have 5,000 examples, you have a perfect blueprint that details every step of what you need to do. So if you still mess up the process of building that warehouse in the right way, then that is a mistake which is not okay to make, because there is no learning value in it. You've already established that, unless you have met a very radical new circumstance. But that's kind of the idea there. And this idea actually brings us to the idea of vicarious learning. It's huge. Yes, you learn from your mistakes, and some mistakes you have to make. So if you have to make that mistake, by all means, go ahead and do it and feel okay that you're making the mistake, because you will learn from that. But if it is a mistake you don't have to make, then try not to make that mistake. I think that's the general theme here. That's a vicarious, because you can access the virtue that would be accomplished, that you would have at the end of that mistake, without having to make that mistake through others, through learning from what others have done, how they failed, etc. That's why it's hugely important to learn, because entrepreneurs learn from each other, and then they draw courage from each other as well. Also, on the other hand, you do not only learn from mistakes, but you also learn from successes. I think that's huge. That's huge, because sometimes in certain situations you might find yourself, or possibly you have already found yourself in a situation where you tried and you failed for a few times, and in your fourth try it feels like you're going to fail again, and you fail for the fourth time. Then it's really difficult to motivate yourself to do the fifth. Sometimes you need a win, and sometimes once you have had enough mistakes, you learn a lot from your successes as well, because you can then contrast what you did between the mistake and the success, the fail and the success. And I think that contrast is a huge learning technique. So in conclusion, I think there are 4 takeaways that I would like to leave with you, to just think more about, to marinate on. First of all, make it okay to fail for yourself, and this is, I think, best done by understanding the balance between freedom and responsibility. Second, don't fail so bad that you will run out of lives to play again. As a toddler, or if you're like playing a game, you have endless lives. You can endlessly try and try again. That's really good. But in reality, as adults, we don't have unlimited ammunition. So try to create the right kind of conditions where it is more safe to fail. This might mean giving yourself 12 months to experiment on building something, and once that 12 months runs out, then that's the end of your runway. Then you would potentially promise yourself you would need to work as a freelance contractor or get a full-time job for the next 12 months, for the next 6 months, so you have some more of an income while you're charging up in a way to try again in the next few months, rather than risking anything and everything. And some people advocate that. I get it, because if 100 people give everything they've got, even if 99 of them end up on the streets, the one person who makes it will have a bigger momentum behind themselves, and I understand that. But I come from Turkey. I lived in Istanbul for a large portion of my life. So in a very unstable economy, it's almost kind of like a reflex for me to hedge your bets, not put all of your eggs into one basket. And the world economy is becoming more and more turbulent, and because of that, I think it makes, and like the COVID situation has shown this as well, a lot of people who just went all in are now in a very, very difficult spot. So I personally don't like the approach of going 100% all in before you have market validation, or before you are making a certain amount of income. You can always put the pedal to the metal once you have good validation, but I don't think before that is really a right idea. First one, make it okay to fail. Second one, don't fail so bad that you'll run out of lives to play again. Third one, yes, you learn from mistakes, but also learn from successes. That's why vicarious learning is huge. And the fourth one, learn from people who have similar stakes to you. What I mean by that is, try to look at it. So if you're just starting out, if you're a first-time entrepreneur or a second-time entrepreneur, so try to look for try to look for the big first breaks of people, not their third exits. So if I'm listening to a founder speak about the success story, and what they go on to tell about is actually how they spent 6 months in the Burning Man and the deserts of that area, working on cool tech and so on, with $5 million in the bank. That's not a particularly good example for me. I don't see much learning value in that, but I would be hugely interested in understanding how they have made that 5 million in the first place. That's what I would want to know. So try to compare yourself with people in similar situations. If you're an immigrant, look for other immigrants with similar backgrounds. If you have a certain specific industry knowledge, look for people who started with that industry specific knowledge, etc. And in a way, that's what I am and my team is trying to do with Startups of London. We are working on a new content program where we will focus on creating the success and fail stories of entrepreneurs, so we can learn from each other. That's it for today. Hope this is useful to you. This is kind of a longer one of our podcasts, but hope you see some learning value in this. If you like, you can send me a message at Ozzie, OZZIE, at startupsoflondon.com. Let me know if you have listened to this podcast and enjoy it. Just say hello, hi. It will mean a lot to me. And if you have any questions, anything you'd like me to discuss, think about, and share with you, I'd love that. Feel free to make some recommendations. Okay, that's it for today. Take care. Thank you.